it's not like it's looking down at man for not recognizing that, but for the sake of violating the least amount of respect that they should have for that which was given to them.
Well, and again, this back to this idea that Jeremiah presents, by the way, in that passage that we read from the Mishnah Torah, in chapter 10, verse 7 through 8, he says, "Who will not fear you, kings of the nations?" Right? I mean, it's a real question. Who will not fear you, kings of the nations? Right? King of the nations. He's talking about Hashem, right? Who will not fear you, king of the nations? For to you it is fitting, right? In other words, this is fitting for everyone to fear you. But he says, among all the wise men of the nations, and in all their kingdoms, there is none like you. Okay? But here's the problem. They have one foolish, he's talking about the wise men among the nations. They have one foolish and senseless notion. They conceive of their empty teachings as wood. Now, what does that mean? So he says, that is, all know that you alone are God, but their foolish error consists of conceiving of this emptiness as your will. In other words, they might have, at least in their mindset is, they might have all these different gods, right? And the real emptiness of all this is, they conceive of this fact that this is really the will of God for them to worship God this way. That's the real emptiness of it. So the reality is, can a Christian keep the 7 laws? Can a Muslim keep the 7 laws? I think even Buddhists and Hindu and anyone can. Absolutely. Do they have the correct concept and ideas of God? Maybe, maybe not.
That's between them and God.
That's between them and God. And that's why God didn't destroy the world in the days of Enoch, because that's an individual thing. But it's the laws that break down the natural course of society. That's the ones eventually that God says, okay, that's it.
Yeah, it's like saying, I don't care.
Exactly.
So if I don't care, you don't care?
Then
here's the output.
Well, I had I used this last one to kind of sign off. I guess that we probably went on long enough about this. But here's the reality. The reality is these people, they violate all the 7 laws. It's very clear. Isaiah points that out in Isaiah 24:5 by making those 3 assumptions, which correlate, by the way, back to the book of Genesis. We pointed that out. And I always remember I'd gone to a birthday celebration of an older gentleman years and years ago in New York. His name was David Horowitz. And David was giving this great speech. And for his, I think it was his 90th birthday, And the one thing that always has stuck with me over the years that he says, and I think this probably would stick with anybody based on the context in which you hear it, at least when I heard it, but he says this. He says, if you don't give a damn, God doesn't give a damn. Now that's always stuck with me. Right? And that's really the bottom line in some sense. But the bottom line is that if we can't have these very bare minimum natural social norms as the prohibition against murder and the prohibition against theft and the prohibition against adultery or illicit sex, if we don't have those basic norms, then society's done away with. If, for example, we said that in the days of Enoch, they didn't have the right, they strayed away from the right ideas about God. In other words, they didn't have it right. They wasn't calling on the name of Hashem anymore. They were calling on these maybe different types of gods that they had fabricated or they had made. Or they had made go-betweens, between him and them. And they wasn't going directly to him anymore. They failed to do that, in other words. But God didn't say, I'm going to destroy you because you don't have this the true idea of me, right? Even when they begin to distort justice and make laws that agreed with their appetites and passions, he didn't destroy them then. But that last corruption, that lawlessness that filled the earth, violence, Hamas, that's when God says, okay, that's it. These people cannot be saved. They have gone beyond the limits. They can't be brought back. And then thank God, by the way, that our society has not gone since that point in time. They might have been maybe some of these laws have been violated for sure. But the basic natural social norms that can be brought out through natural reasoning. I mean, these are laws that we're told that men would have come to on their own, even if the Torah hadn't been given, right? In other words, they're rational, they're logical laws that allow a society to actually live together.
Well, that's proven too because the ancient law books that were found.
Sure, ancient codes. Hammurabi Code, for example, is one of the
exactly. That proves that there has always been a knowledge of proper behavior.
Exactly.
And this is the point that I think the Torah is trying
to. If you're going to have a society, if you're going to build, if you're just going to go out there and live on your own, it doesn't matter. But if you're going to have societies with cities, you've got to have those social norms, or something it's not going to work out.
Right.
Those codes, those earlier codes, are not exactly. Some of them were pretty good codes, by the way. But
it was still the social norms that man should have come to.
Exactly.
And that's what I think that's part of the message in the text as well.
Yes.
And I think the Torah actually is corroborated when you look at ancient history, because it's given a detail of, well, if this happens according to what the Torah says, there should be a trace of it somewhere out there.
Absolutely.
On somebody else's point of view.
Absolutely.
And it happens to be the case when you look at the fact of what you find in those ancient, books or copies and codes. They had laws. They knew that that's the only way you can maintain society. But people get caught up in their own desires.
Mm-hmm.
People get caught up in just doing what they want, power hungry, and they start messing everything up. We're sadly seeing some of that today.
Exactly. Well, even dictators have laws.
Yeah.
But are they just laws?
That's the problem.
And a dictator can go out and take any man's life that he wants to. That's his own law. I mean, he becomes his own law, and that's not the way it works. God, the Creator, like I said, man in some sense has always been, ever since he's been in existence on the face of the earth, has had a covenant relationship with God, and that means that the Creator tells the creations how he wants them to live. What's necessary for them to live. But let me add one more thing. These laws that we talk about, some people say, oh, law, it's horrible, it's awful, You say that until you need them. Everybody does. But the problem is, if you have a Creator that is a compassionate, kind, yes, also just, and also righteous, right? All those things that we think about. If he's all those in one, and he is, an absolute unity of one, he's not divided up into kindness, and he's not divided up in this,
Right.
If we have that, then any law that he gives us is for our benefit, right? Because it doesn't benefit him in any sense,
right?
Some people have this idea of, well, if I keep all these laws, I really please God. I can't please God because God can't be changed in one way or the other. In other words, if I can please him, then I can make him sad, or I can make him angry, I can make him happy, In Malachi, he makes a statement, he says, I am the Lord God, I change not. So all the laws, whatever form that you want to look at them on, they were given for me and you, for our benefit, right? And not for mine, your benefit, but for, if I live a righteous life, according to Job, by the way, Job says, if I live a righteous life, who does it affect?